Today's dedication is for Zahn, who gave me a very generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon. Edgar Markov against Krenko. So vampires versus goblins, and we only have one vampire, amazingly, so yeah, we'll have to mulligan that and hope that we get into lands. And of course we are punished, as you tend to be on Magic Online. Secluded Courtyard will get us into our Mardu colours for vamps though. I think we're on the play here, so yeah, maybe Dismember will be able to keep us in it. We'll be able to get rid of Haste Enablers or a Krenko or something like that. We'll keep this, shouldn't keep a one-lander though, but it'll be interesting to see how far we can get with just a one-lander. So Secluded Courtyard, obviously going to name Vampire, and we'll play ourselves a Death Touch Lifelinker, which will come down with a token from the command zone. Alright, well, we draw into another one-drop Vampire at least, but we need to start hitting lands as quickly as we can. Play the Cutthroat, that is Skulk and Lifelink, making it more difficult to block again. And these vampires look awesome, these vampire tokens. He looks like a bit like Alucard from Symphony of the Night. Anyone play that? Or I suppose you could have seen the Netflix series by now. Alright, we see a Goblin Picker, that is discard and draw. And we do manage to get into a land, that's excellent. So once again, this is a tribal land named Vampire, and whenever a creature enters under an opponent's control, you may have them lose one life. Couldn't think of anything much better against Krenko. So throw that down, cantrips again in the form of another token, and I think we'll hold on to the tokens for when the Blood Artist comes into play, so we'll just go in with Death Touch and Skulk, both of which have lifelink, so can't block the Skulk because it has greater power, and won't want to block the Death Toucher, I wouldn't have thought. Okay, does decide to trade out with the 2/2, so maybe he's looking for a Blasphemous Act or Pyroclasm, some kind of board wipe. Does anyone play Pyroclasm? Alright, Krenko Tin Street Kingpin is definitely worth blowing up, although we could leave it in play and let the Bloodseeker do some damage, but I don't know if we're going to be able to deal with an army of goblins, so probably best to get rid of it. Alright, Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth means that we can get down the Blood Artist and probably go Dismember onto the Krenko. Obviously the more damage we can do in the red zone the better. We are in the multiplayer room here in 1v1 format, which means it's exactly the same as multiplayer, including live totals and ban lists. It's just that we're only up against one opponent, and the reason that is relevant is because in regular 1v1 you tend to start with, it depends on which variants of 1v1 you're playing, but you can start at 25, 30. I think in the Magic Online official 1v1 room you start at 30, which means that playing it this way, aggro decks are at a distinct disadvantage. Anyway, Blood Artist successfully sees the back of Krenko, so draining for 1, and puts us back at our starting life total, even though we took 4 to the Dismember. Just need to pray we don't see a board wipe, because we are definitely dead if our opponent manages to get a board wipe off. Wanted to show you a video actually whilst my opponent is deciding on what to do. Okay, going for the Krenko, we will definitely go after that with Swords to Plowshares. Yeah, I was getting ready to go to work the other day, and he was climbing into my high-vis vest, so it was it kind of looked like he was getting ready to go to work with me, like he wanted to get his steel toe cap boots on and his hard hat and his high-vis vest and all that, and I thought it was funny that a cat was playing around with that kind of stuff. I'm actually now just realising the Swords to Plowshares, we can't cast it, can we? Because we can only go for white mana for vampires with this. So we'll just have to go for the Insolent Neonate, and could maybe discard the next card we draw next turn to try and get into white mana before Krenko goes absolutely insane. But as of now, we'll continue to try and go wide with everything except the Bloodseeker and Blood Artist. So we will turn everything in sideways, like I said, and pull these back. We'll lose a token here, but not too worried about an individual token while we're trying to aggro out. It's our opponents to win this. Decided not to take out a token because it would have dealt a damage with the Blood Artist anyway. I think I would have gone after the Vampire token to get rid of it, but it might be that our opponent is looking to blow up Blood Artist with something like a Siege Gang Commander. That will put some tokens into play. So Bloodseeker going to deal a nice chunk of damage here. Siege Gang Commander comes in with tokens, and then Krenko surely looking to be activated here. So we've managed to get our opponent down to 20 And then Krenko is activating, so gonna make another 5 goblins here. Taking 5 damage to the Bloodseeker, takes him down to 15. Something like a Captivating Vampire off the top would be excellent, or white mana for a Swords to Plowshares. Might have to discard the Swords to Plowshares to the Neonate, depending on what we draw into here. Okay, a Hell Rider we definitely don't want to see, so not going to be swinging in, I don't think. Let's see what we draw into when we discard this. We will drain our opponent a bit more with the Blood Artist. Alright, draws us into a Legion's Landing, which again doesn't help us with the current mana situation, so our opponent's got the chance to deal with the 2 troubled creatures here. Yeah, it's a real shame. Swords to Plowshares would have dealt with this quite nicely and would have bought us a considerable amount of time, but looks as though he's going to pull away with it next turn. Let's take all of these and turn in sideways. So blocking with a Siege Gang Commander, trading out some Goblin tokens means that he'll have fewer. You do have to sacrifice Goblins to this, don't you? Sacrifice a Goblin, 2 mana, 2 damage to any target. I mean, he'll still have a surplus of them, of course, thanks to the Krenko. So Blood Artist going to gain us some more life, drain our opponent some more. So goes down to 5, but still can win this one if he's careful with the order in which he does stuff. Should probably sacrifice to Siege Gang Commander, getting rid of the Blood Artist, then go after the Bloodseeker, and then he can make tokens to his heart's content. 5 cards in hand though, one of them could tempt him. Alright, so does not go for the Siege Gang Commander play, goes for a Hobgoblin. That will take him down to 4. And an Illusionist Braces. He's giving us way too much time here. I will get rid of that Siege Gang Commander as soon as I can. The instant we get some white mana, that thing's gone, so he's lost his chance with that, potentially. Really wants to see the back of both of these. There probably aren't many worse creatures that he could see in the deck than Blood Artist and Bloodseeker. Maybe we get into a board wipe here, that'll do it. A Legion Lieutenant will buff our creatures and get us another token, but he gets another turn with that Siege Gang Commander, luckily. This is why you don't keep 1-landers. Noteworthy actually, this will buff up the Skulk creature by 1, so we could have got 1 extra damage through there. And maybe that would have been relevant. Yeah, maybe that 1 damage would have been relevant. Whatever. We'll see what our opponent does. He's surprised us in the last turn, maybe he'll surprise us again. Squee the Immortal. I'm not sure if he knows what Siege Gang Commander does. He's refusing to sacrifice a creature into it. He's still got a chance to do something here, just barely. We've switched off his Krenko now. Now seems to be activating the Hobgoblin so that he can get rid of a creature. Yeah, I think he just went after... Yeah, he's gone after the Bloodseeker, so the Anthem effect holding him off here. I really don't think he understands what the Siege Gang Commander does. Now activating the Krenko. Is he looking to... Okay, I think he assumes that he has no way out here. I mean, that's why you play to your outs. You never know who you're going to be up against. But really all he needed to do there was sacrifice creatures into the Siege Gang Commander. Just getting rid of 2 creatures would have got rid of those 2 problem tokens, or 2 problem creatures in the Seeker and the Artist. That doesn't count as a victory, so we will play again. Alright, already got way better mana here, way better hand. So we will keep this one up against Narset Enlightened Exile. It's a pretty scary commander, but we'll see what we can do against it. Deciding to shock in a Sacred Foundry and go straight in for a Mox Diamond, so we're up against a strong deck here, as you would assume, with Narset Enlightened Exile. That takes him into Izzet Signet, so only 3 cards left in hand. Must have mulliganed down. Another land for us, that is Cavern of Souls. So let's go for the Swamp in case we need to play Isolated Chapel in untapped. Obviously could have played the Insolent Neonate there, but I don't think we're going to be outrunning this player. More worried about fixing the colours properly, in all fairness. So there is Narset Enlightened Master. We can't get rid of it with the Nameless Inversion. That is only -3, unfortunately. So getting into triple black will be the thing here. Let's go for the Cavern of Souls now. Naming Vampire. I mean, I assume this player is going to get tokens into play and the like, but we'll try and get rid of it with the Gatekeeper of Malak here. Play the Insolent Neonate. Suppose we could go for sacrificing this to get rid of a land, and maybe get into something more relevant. Narset Parter of Veils will trigger Prowess on the Narset. No blue mana held up at least. A Manifold Key will Make it so that they can hold up the, is it Signet or the Mox Diamond maybe? Obviously they won't have mana to put through the Is It Signet, so it'll have to be the Mox Diamond if they go for that. And then Narset doesn't have anything to flash back, thankfully. So do we go for the Neonate play? Or do we want to deal some damage to Narset? I think that would be a better idea. So we'll take the hit. Alright, a Concealed Courtyard for us now. So probably discard that if it's going to be a tap land. Let's go Isolated Chapel. And we'll pay triple black into the Gatekeeper of Malakir to edict our opponent. So amazingly, we successfully get rid of the Narset. And go in at Narset the Planeswalker as well. Now if we manage to have our opponent block... Now if we get our opponent to block a 1/1 token with this, then we can obviously get the toughness down to 3. They could buff it with prowess, but that could maybe open up a nameless inversion. Alright, so tapping out into a Narset again. We do have Menace on this, so we can get rid of Narset, Parter of the Veils. Not that we have too much card draw in the deck, but getting rid of Narset would be a good idea. Alright, a Caves of Koilos now. So before we do anything else, we might sacrifice this on this turn, so yeah, let's go through to combat. And we'll just take all 3 of these in straight at our opponent to encourage a block. And this has Menace, so they can't block that. That will deal with the Narset nicely. Alright, and they block the 2/2, so that is more than enough damage on there to get rid of it with the Nameless Inversion. We'll just do it here. And that does count as a vampire because it's a tribal spell, so we get another token off that. Hence the reason it's in the deck. So Narset going to cost 8 now, which they probably will be able to afford. Let's go for sacrificing this vampire. We'll get rid of the courtyard and draws us into a Champion of Dusk, which will potentially refill our hand. So get the Shockland into play tapped. That will bring the Clifftop Retreat into play untapped. And hopefully we'll be able to get some more damage going soon, because we're giving our opponent all the time in the world, which is the last thing you want to do against Narset. Does manage to make a land, meaning they can replay the commander again. Instead deciding on a Thran Dynamo, 1 card in hand. Still no instants and sorceries to flash back. Manifold Key taps and untaps the Thran Dynamo, maybe that has them. No, I don't think they can still afford the Narset. Yeah, so with 1 card in hand, just deciding to give up on that mana and pass the turn. And there is a Path of Ancestry for us. A tap land is tempting, but I think I'm just going to go for the Champion of Dusk here, so that we'll be able to draw a decent amount. So get the caves into play. Our vampire will be uncounterable, and it will make a token before the Champion of Dusk enters, meaning we draw even more cards. Alright, gets us into Blood Artist again, Dusk Legion Zealot. Lightning Bolt might help get rid of our opponent's commander again. So as long as we don't see a hand getting refilled, we'll be alright, I think. I pray. Just get rid of the tap land at this point, I think. And there is Narset again, 2 cards in hand at the moment, and a decent surplus of mana thanks to the Thran Dynamo and the key. Draw into Vicious Conquistador. When it attacks, each opponent loses 1 life. Probably best to get the Drana going soon. So let's go Clifftop Retreat. I do want to have the Blood Artist in play, because if we lose some creatures in combat here, which we're likely to, then we'll be draining our opponent like we saw in a previous game. And we'll attempt to Lightning Bolt Narset out of the way. We'll swing in with some creatures. Only need to see our opponent block a 1/1. And they do block a 1/1, so let's... yeah, we'll let them take the damage first. They might be able to remove a token. Alright, yeah, so 1 damage marker there. Blood Artist will save the targets and yield. And then let's see if our opponent can do anything about the Lightning Bolt. All they really need to do here is cast a non-creature spell at instant speed, and that will buff it enough to save it. Looks like they do have something. Any instant or sorcery would do. Reality Shift onto the Blood Artist. We encourage them to get rid of that. And the Prowess will rescue the Narset, so pulling double duty there. And the Manifest was an Inquisition of Kozilek. Could have come in handy before now, but not to worry. We've refilled our hands, so we can't exactly complain. Get Drana into play so that we can maybe do some damage with that next turn. Noteworthy that they can flash back a Reality Shift now, so Drana could eat that straight away. But it might be that we hit a vampire off the top that we can flip round, so we'll just encourage them to use it. Maybe an argument to be made for us holding this back against the Narset. Might do that next turn, but we do need to be landing as much damage as possible. Serra Ascendant does not have flying, thankfully. Still only one card in our opponent's hand, and going for the reality shift here, I imagine. Oh, I completely forgot our opponent can go after our stuff as well, so actually going for the lightning bolt, and that goes onto the Drana instead. Drana was going to switch off our Skull Clamp anyway, so I'm not incredibly upset that we lost that. Not going to give them an Inquisition of Kozilek quite yet, so we won't block with the Manifest creature. Still one card only in our opponent's hand. And there's an Arid Mesa, so yeah, we'll just turn that into a Badlands, I think. So let's go for the Dusk Legion Zealot first of all. That will lose us a life, draw us a card, and make a token into Falconwrath Gorger. Each vampire creature card you own that isn't on the battlefield has Madness. The Madness card equal to the mana cost. I think this is just a 1 mana 2/1, which isn't bad in a vampire tribal deck. So get that into play as well. Just want to be absolutely flooding the board with vampires, really. So why don't we swing in now? I was hoping for some kind of Anthem effect, but it doesn't look as though we're going to get into it, so let's turn in sideways. I'll go for the 4 damage onto the champion again instead of blocking the Narset. We're going to try our best not to put instants and sorceries into the bin, and I dare say that this will get the reality shift next turn, assuming our opponent doesn't put something better into the bin. So knocking our opponent down to 10, and I think we'll try this Skull Clamp out. Clamp onto a token, manages to have us draw 2 cards. Doesn't seem as though our opponent can do anything about this, and there is a Dismember. So in that case, we'll go for an uncounterable vampire in the form of Vicious Conquistador, and we'll dismember the Narset. And even if they have a means of casting a non-creature spell here, it won't be enough because they've got 4 toughness to the -5/5. They could go for a counter spell or hexproof or something. Indestructible wouldn't help them. Alright, able to hardcast a Force of Will, so able to counter that. And they can go for the Dismember or the Reality Shift. They had access to removal anyway, so not too worried about that. Have to force them to use their counter spells. So they want a board wipe or some means of just winning straight up now. I think this is a deck that's going to win in the red zone as well, so not sure how they'll win without a board wipe here. I'm up for being surprised though. Alright, looks as though they're playing something, just making the commander unblockable with this. And aiming for the reality shift with the Narset. Pointing that at the 4/4, I don't think matters at this point. That's dealt 8 damage so far. Cannot block the Narset. 1 card left in hand. 13 points of commander damage. And there is a Forerunner of Legion. So we could draw into the Captivating Vampire maybe? Yeah, that's a play we could make. Let's try and get as much damage through as possible first. So we'll just drop the Courtyard, naming Vampire as you would expect. And after the tutor it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana, so we can draw with the Clamp and play a 4 mana Vampire. We've got a 5 mana Vampire in here that drains per Vampire in play, so that wouldn't work, but Captivating Vampire should be helpful. Let's just see if we can do anything against our opponent here. He might have just got into a Rift or something. Haven't even looked at what we manifested. That was a Tech Edge, so can't flip that around. If we turn most of these in sideways, this will be 2 damage, assuming that's blocked. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we can pull back 4 of these, which will be good for the Cat Vamp. Maybe they've got removal. And we'll just swing in with everything, try and make it difficult for our opponent. We'll make additional vampires with the Forerunner and the casting of the Captivating Vampire anyway. I'll hold 1 back because it's 2 from this, 2 from the Captivating Vampire, and then a 5th one we need for that, so yeah, I'll hold back 1 token. That took some working out, and I probably still goofed it up. So Conquistador going to deal 1 damage, and we're pretty close to switching off the Ancient Tomb as well. Alright, there's a Teferi's Protection, so not going to deal the damage anyway. Well, it could have been much worse than that. That's hell of a top deck from our opponent. So we'll do our shenanigans during the upkeep. Obviously can't target things that are phased out. This does mean that our opponent won't be able to interfere with whatever we're doing at least. So Forerunner of the Legion comes into play. And we get to search for a vampire and put it on top. Don't have the Blood Artist in place, so going for a sack outlet wouldn't help. It was the Malakir Blood Witch I was referring to before. That would drain our opponents out, but we were 1 mana away from doing that anyway. So yeah, let's go for the Captivating Vampire and hope that we don't see a board wipe. Then we can clamp strictly onto a tapped token. Obviously draws us into the Captivating Vampire, so now we can play that. And that will get us into our token that we need. Forerunner Legion will give something +1/+1, it doesn't matter. And then we'll Skull Clamp onto a tapped Vampire. They do get +1/+1 now from the Anthem effect, so Clamp is somewhat turned off here. Just hoping our opponent doesn't get a great top deck. So before the draw step, we will steal away the Narset and turn it into a Vampire. Noteworthy that I always point this out, but it's worth noting for newer players. If the ability does not have a little tap arrow and it just says the word tap the Vampire tokens, then you can do it with creatures that have Summoning Sickness in this case. So we do successfully steal away the Narset, and we are able to get back something like a Dismember, which hopefully is irrelevant. Our opponent did the right thing in playing into the next turn to see if he would draw into a board wipe, but didn't manage to get into it, so has absolutely no chance when the Narset is not going to get anything relevant back. Yeah, after that quick start that our opponent got off to, I didn't think we stood a hope in hell's chance of winning that one, especially with the 10+ life that the multiplayer room gives you in an aggro game such as this one, but yeah, played to our outs and managed to pull out the victory. Hopefully you all enjoyed this revisit to Edgar Markov. We've had some new vampires in recent sets, only had a couple of them added to the deck, can't remember the name of them, but you can look at the deck list in the description below, where you will also find a link to Patreon, and a big thank you to the patrons for their support of the channel. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.